Hi, this is Citizen Voice coming to you from the Green Zone. A very special interview with our friend Seth. We've been trying to meet with him for 3 days, and we just bumped into him as we're leaving the Green Zone. So Seth, it's great that we did this. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're here?
Thanks, Paul. First of all, it's good to meet you here. So my name is Seth Itzkan, and I'm with a group called Soil for Climate. So there's the picture. So we're advocating for soil as a drawdown solution to help get the carbon out of the air to complement the emission reductions.
Yeah, we're learning now that if we want to get to 1.5, which is a very ambitious goal, that we're going to have to do extraordinary things, and we need to hear more about agriculture and that impact. So what have you learned about the value of treating the soil with respect?
Well, first of all, we have to get way past 1.5. I mean, we actually need to get back to zero warming, because even at 1.5, the glaciers are melting. They're just not melting as fast as they are at 2. So we really have to, people have to understand we need to go back to 0 degrees differential, because the melting that has started has to stop, and it has to retreat. So we need to have a massive carbon drawdown, and the only way to do that over the long term and safely is by restoring soils around the world, because soils are the largest reservoir of atmospheric carbon.
And what's the best thing that an individual can do to create that movement, both in their own life and also to create that kind of policy?
Okay, well, the first step is knowledge and just advocacy that there is sort of a hopeful narrative in the climate movement, and that's that restoring soil also improves food quality. It makes land more resilient to droughts and to rain. It improves water tables. It increases biodiversity. And so restoring soil is a good thing to do anyway. Again, and then here's the banner. But I came at this from a climate perspective. And when I realized how much we could draw out of the air and how quickly, then I became a soil advocate.
And it can happen quickly, because I know a lot of people think that this is going to take decades and decades to get our CO2 back to where it belongs.
Yeah, well, even decades is much better than the other prognosis, which is centuries to millennia. So decades is actually fast, and we need to get started on it immediately. And so the first part of this is simply the narrative to realize that soils are our ally, perhaps our best ally in reversing global warming. And so we just need to get that message out there. In terms of practice, that has to do with what we call regenerative agriculture, and that includes crops and grazing. So there's different ways of cropping that help restore soil carbon, and there's different ways of grazing that help restore soil carbon. There's also wetlands restoration, reforestation. You know, there's a sort of a big umbrella of ecological-based approaches to drawing carbon out of the air, and we need to really be doing this in earnest. So from my point of view and the point of view of my colleagues in this movement, this is 50% of the climate solutions. Cutting emissions is 50%, but taking what we call the legacy carbon, or the carbon pollution out of the air, is the other 50%.
So we want to know how we can connect people with your work. So we want the website, and then anything on the background else that you would like to share about Soil for Climate.
Okay, sure. So first of all, here's the logo, and for now it's a Facebook group, Soil for Climate with the number 4. So please join that. There are other excellent groups that are doing good work, and that we're complimentary with their work. Regeneration International is one of them. It's sort of an umbrella organization of a lot of very good groups. The Center for Food Safety, the Savory Institute, which works on restorative grazing. So, you know, like I said, we're a big umbrella. And I just wanted to say something about sort of the evolution of this term and what I'm trying to do here. I'm taking a page intentionally out of the 350.org playbook, and their approach for the first couple years, 2008, 2009, was simply to get people to know the number 350. And Bill McKibben and that crew deserves a lot of credit for that because it worked. I mean, people all over the world now associate 350.org as sort of the leading voice in the climate movement, and that's just a number, and they got people to know a number. And so what we want to do right now is simply get people to know a message. You know, the message is soil for climate, and it's sort of a learning moment. You have the word soil and the word climate next to each other on the page, it makes you begin to think, and that's sort of a positive. And this is complementary to 350, because the only way to get to 350, seeing as we've already passed it, is to pull carbon out of the air. And the way you do that is through soil and other forms of biological restoration.
So all good things begin with some type of an experience that you've had earlier in your life. So what was it that drew you to this movement, to soil, and to the idea that we have to take care of our soil?
So my background was in what you would call traditional climate activism, that is advocating for alternative forms of energy, solar power, windmills, electronic cars, that type of thing. And I still do, of course. But around 2007, 2008, sometime around there, I became aware of the incredible potential of soils to pull carbon out of the air, and it also became clear that the path we were on wasn't going towards emissions cuts. That we were still accelerating the amount of carbon that were being put in the air. So we had to try something different. And then in 2009, research came out that clearly showed that even if we stopped emissions then, in 2009, the effects of warming are going to continue for centuries to millennia. So that's when it became clear that we had to, in earnest, think about pulling carbon out of the air. And the more I looked into the potential of soils, the more I realized, my God, this is a huge opportunity here, and it has all these positive paybacks anyway. So I come to this from a technical climate mitigation point of view. You know, the better technology, the better cars, all that. I mean, I have an engineering degree, and a lot of the colleagues in this movement have been coming to it from sort of an ag side. And so the agricultural community and the soil scientists have known for decades that there's a climate narrative to doing better agriculture, but the climate movement in general hasn't really been listening to that. They've just been focused on emissions. I'm coming at this from the climate side and discovering soils, and it's an optimistic crowd, you know, because you're working with farmers and ranchers and people who are making the land better. And when you go to Africa, like I've done, and you've seen fields where there's healthy grass where there used to be desert, you're like, yes, this is working, and it's working now. So I salute and stand with all my friends who are fighting the pipelines and you know, fighting big oil and all that. But I also want them to pay attention to our friends in the ag movement who are also restoring the ground to pull carbon out of the air.
It's a win-win-win as far as I can see if we work together to make these things happen. And I'm encouraging CCL, Citizens Climate Lobby, once we get the carbon fee and dividend established, that this would be a wonderful place to put some of our great energy. And along with that, we want to say a shout out to Gary Rosinski. So let's say hi to our friend.
Hi, Gary.
Yeah.
Hi, Gary. And I want to give a shout out to CCL too, because I'm a big advocate for that, because one of the best ways to make the regenerative agriculture work is to have a carbon fee and dividend, because the people who are going to be most rewarded from that are the ag people who are doing different forms of land management. So it's completely complementary with CCL.
Yeah. Excellent, exciting partnership that we can build together. So we look forward to many years of partnership as we get this thing rolling in our country and around the world. Thank you, Seth.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.